I'm Marc Dresner, and welcome to Partnerships TV, featuring the experts and leaders at the forefront of clinical trials and development. Joining me today is Rehbar Tayyabkhan. He is the Executive Director of Global Development Operations at Bristol-Myers Squibb. Rehbar, thanks for joining us
Thank you for having me today.
Yeah. Let's dive right in. With the sourcing of studies to CROs, what trends and shifts are you seeing in terms of the types of services being requested, for example?
So I mean, I'll speak for Bristol-Myers Squibb, but also many other large pharma companies, because we've seen a consistent trend across large pharma, which is historically, if you looked at CRO services that large pharmas would outsource services for, we would outsource, the site management and site monitoring activities with CRAs. We would outsource data management, which are typically the transactional activities, and we would keep a lot of the other higher level activities within the sponsor. What we have seen are shifts in two areas. One area is around the higher level headquarter operations, such as medical and statistical services. And then the other area where we're seeing a shift is in terms of higher level skill sets in the regions, where we're looking for greater levels of interaction between our CROs and regional authorities and regional investigators.
Along those lines, what are the specific needs that sponsors have of their CRO partners when you're looking at that regional level?
Sure. So historically, when we would work with CROs in the regions, the CROs would, again, do transactional activities for us. So the sponsors would set up the relationships with the sites. The sponsors would negotiate contracts with the sites, and we leveraged the CROs to be our arms and legs. They would go out to the sites. They would monitor the safety of the patients. They would monitor the data. But that was the extent of those services. Today, where we have higher level expectations of our CRO partners, so now we're allocating the responsibility of identifying sites to the CROs. In some cases, we've allocated the responsibility of having the health authority interactions in individual countries, and that takes a slightly different set of expectations, a slightly different set of learnings and knowledge for our CRO partners.
How confident are you ceding that responsibility to CROs? Are you comfortable with their ability to execute on your expectations there? So
we take an approach actually coined by one of our CRO partners, which is trust and verify. Which is, you have to, in order to be able to move on our expectations and capabilities for the CROs, we have to give them some more accountability and more responsibility, but we need to do it in a manner that doesn't necessarily compromise the studies. So if you ask me how comfortable I am doing it or how confident I am, I think it's going to be in small steps, and there are some areas where there have been challenges, which you would expect. But if you were to go back 5 years and think about just basic CRO services that we outsourced, there were some other basic things that we were not as comfortable with, and now we don't even talk about those things anymore, because it's become just part of standard business operations, and it's become the nature of how we execute clinical studies. So to be more specific, I mean, if you're talking about health authority interactions, that's one area where there has been a high level of concern. And it's not necessarily because the CROs can't do those services. It's around, what is our responsibility as a sponsor in certain markets, whether we actually want to give up those interactions, because we may view that as a mode by which we can have those dialogues with the health authority. So, we probably are retrenching a little bit and saying, well, we'll want to work with our CRO partners to assemble all of the regulatory submission documents. But we may want to still be in the position to have those dialogues with the health authorities, and on a case-by-case basis, where either we don't have the resources or it's a case where we've already had a relationship and we want to continue growing the relationship with the CROs, we may continue to delegate those responsibilities over. Some of the other areas where there have been challenges, but I think we have to constantly look to improve it, is how we engage our investigative sites. If you look at sponsors, we typically have very deep-rooted relationships with some large institutions, especially in the regions, and we'll actually put the effort into working through challenges in their process in terms of getting the study approved with the ethics committee, or the study approved within the review boards at the hospitals. And the CROs have taken a slightly different approach historically. CROs may be a little bit more maybe broader in the number of sites they go after, and then look for sites that have demonstrated interest, where historically the sponsors have narrowed the number of sites they work with, and then they focus their efforts. So I think that one of the challenges that we'll have, or opportunities, if you really want to look at positively, is how do we help our CRO partners develop the same kinds of relationships that we have with those key sites and institutions, so that we can, together we can make the process more efficient.
It seems to me that there needs to be a mindset change here then at the regional level, both from the sponsor's perspective and certainly from the CRO perspective, as you've touched on. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So I mean, the way we look at it is, if you have a study that you outsource to a CRO, it doesn't mean that the study is any less important to the sponsor. It's our studies. We view every single study as ours, and we have a mix of studies that we do in-house internally, and we have a portfolio of studies that we outsource to our CRO partners. So we cannot abrogate our responsibilities of making sure that the studies come across successfully. So in terms of ways of helping our CRO partners, I mean, we're very open to introducing our CRO partners to the investigative sites. We need to make sure that our internal staff feel comfortable with the CROs being able to develop those deep relationships with investigative sites. It's very important for us. And at the end of the day, when you talk about mindset change, it is the CROs feeling like they're part of the sponsor company. It's around our employees within the sponsor company being comfortable that the CROs are really just an extension of our staff. But it's with the understanding that the CROs have their own set of SOPs and procedures and systems and tools that they use, which may be different from ours, but at the end of the day, it's the same end goal.
What would you say, along these lines, that sponsors can do to improve those relationships and sort of, get the hands synced up?
So there are a couple of things. I mean, the one thing I realize, especially when I go out to the regions and interact with our own staff in the regions as well as with our CRO partners, is you need to create an environment or a venue where the staff from both organizations actually can meet and interact. So you need to take down that barrier. It's not like we're two separate companies, and as a result, we need to operate independently. I made a mistake early on when we started rolling out studies to our outsourced providers, where I told our staff, look, you can be hands-off and the CROs can run it because they're accountable for delivering, the performance in the regions for our studies. And our staff took it to heart, said, okay, fine, we're hands-off. And I realized that was actually not the right approach. The right approach was, creating the environment and the framework where the critical information and knowledge and wisdom, collective wisdom, could be shared between our CRO partners as well as our local staff. And that's what I've been espousing and sharing and making sure. So we need to create an environment where we have a lot of dialogue and interaction. The other part, which is sometimes a little bit harder, and again, it comes through improved dialogue, is we may be structured in the regions differently from how our CRO providers are structured. And what I mean by that is many pharma companies have a hub and spoke model, where we'll have a main country and then we'll have satellite countries off of that main country. We have found for BMS our own optimal model, and we continue to evaluate that. CROs have found a model that works for them, and in many cases, it doesn't necessarily always converge. And so we then need to find out, okay, who are the key points of contact between the CRO and the sponsor company for a particular country and or site, because as long as we work that out, regardless of what our organizational model is, we can find a way of making that work.
If you had to give yourself a report card, on the movement, the shift that you've been undertaking here, where would you put yourself at this stage, and what do you think is required to get to where you want to be?
Sure. So I would probably give ourselves an optimistic B plus, to be honest with you. Yeah. But that's because I'm a hard grader. I think that I've talked about where some of our challenges are, and the challenges are always going to be in those areas that are new for us. So performance at the regional level, and then some of the higher level skill sets at the headquarters level are new areas for us, and therefore create some challenges and opportunities. I think that in order to get to the A, we're going to have to get to a point where we're definitely far more focused on how we approach sites and how we have the dialogue with sites and investigators at sites. I think that there are things that we can do to get there. So we're talking about how do we make it transparent to the sites that it's a Bristol-Myers Squibb study that our CRO partners are doing for us. Do we look at some of the letterhead and make sure that we actually co-brand with our CRO partner, so it's very clear that it's Bristol-Myers Squibb working with our CRO partner on a study? Do we make sure that the dialogue that would occur with an investigator in a region, regardless of whether the study is in-house or outsourced, there are still certain types of dialogue that the investigators at sites want to have. They still want to talk to a physician at the sponsor company, and there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to. So for me, success would be when I tell my staff that we're going to outsource a study, and the staff says, no problem, we'll handle it. I would say that in many cases, the mindset has already started to shift. People do approach outsourcing studies in a more positive manner than they've ever done before. I think they realize it's something that we have to do just with all our other constraints in terms of headcount and focus towards productivity. So there has been a far more willingness than ever before to outsource. I think that the next step is making sure that we do it in as efficient a manner as possible without creating way too much redundancy between our organizations, by improving the way we interact and dialogue between our internal staff and our CRO partners, by taking away barriers, and being clear in terms of when we have delegated responsibility, what are the responsibilities of our CRO partner and what is our responsibility, and both parties owning it.
Well, Rehbar, you've given us some terrific insights, and I look forward to seeing what progress you're going to be making, particularly in the art of those dialogues that seems so critically important moving forward.
Absolutely.
On that note, we're going to conclude this episode of Partnerships TV. I want to thank you very much for joining us today. And if you would like to learn more about partnerships in clinical trials, the conference and exposition that produces this series, please visit us online at www.clinicaltrialpartnerships.com. Until next time, I'm Marc Dresner. Thanks for tuning in.